Moishe and Aaron by the Sreifas Hachatos of the Sirish Chodesh on the day of the last day of the Miluim. So, Tanur Rabbanan, there's a lot of psukim that we're going to analyze, and it's good to quickly take a look inside the Chumash in Vayikra Yud so that we have a good understanding of what the discussion was, so that we could understand it. Okay, here we go. Vayidaber Hashem, Yidaber Moishe el Aharon vel Elazar vel Isamar banav hanesarim Rachman al. This was after the tragedy of the loss of Nadav and Avihu, and he told them, "Chuz mincha haneseres meisha Hashem." Take the mincha. This was a special mincha. Rashi tells us that was only for the Yemei HaMiluyim. It wasn't a carbon that was normally brought year after year. So Moshe specifically instructed Aaron, Elazar, and Isamar to eat from the carbon, even though they were anointed. They had just lost Nadav and Avihu that day. Ki kadosh kadosh ami. V'chalta Moshe b'makom kadosh ki chakka v'chak v'necha hi me'ishi Hashem ki chen tzuvesi. That's how I was commanded. This pasuk ki chen tzuvesi, the Gemara is going to want to explain what does it mean I was commanded. But the Pashas is, I was commanded that you should eat it even though you are anointed. What about this Chazei Apnufa, the Shoikat Truma? That's also a special carbon for the Yemei HaMiluyim only. Toichlu b'makim tar, atu v'nechu v'nesecha itach, ki chakcha v'chak v'necha, nitnu mizivchei shamay b'nei Yisrael, Shoikat Truma v'Chazei Apnufa lisha chalavim yaviyu l'hanav t'nurol l'fnei Hashem, v'yilchalav v'nechet l'chaladam, kasher tziva Hashem. Once again, Hashem said, eat this even though you're anointed. Now, regarding the Sir Rosh Chodesh, which was not a carbon that was exclusively for that day, rather it was a carbon that even the Dairis. Vesir Chatas, Dorosh, Dorash, Moishe, this is from the earliest Remozim towards Koil Dirshu. Vesir Chatas, Dorish, Moshe. Vihine, okay, it says Moshe, okay, Shan. Dorish, Moshe. Vihine, Saraf, it was burnt. And he expressed frustration, admonishment. Again, ki kodesh kodesh him hein lehuva es dama kodesh pnima. We had a discussion about this pasuk, which we'll have again. Moishe was speculating: was it this problem? Was it that problem? And since there were no problems, you should have eaten it. Again, kasher tzivesi. So 3 times it uses a lotion of tzivui, and then Aaron responded. It's a cryptic message. The Gemara is going to sort out what it meant. Had I eaten the chatas and not burnt it, due to whatever this pasuk is referring to, would Hashem have been happy? Whatever it was that Aaron argued, Moshe accepted. Now the Gemara is going to go through this conversation based on 2 different approaches. Zogt the Heilige Gemara. Kichen tzivesi, kasher tzivisi, kasher tziva Hashem. We saw the psukim inside. Kichen tzivesi means ba'aninus yoichalua, means HaKadosh Baruch Hu said at tzivui that even though you're anointed, eat the mincha. Kasher tzivesi is when Moshe Rabbeinu was admonishing Aaron, and he says, "Why didn't you eat it, kasher tzivesi? Why didn't you eat it like I told you? Where did I tell you? B'shas ma'aseh." So it's Rashi, as soon as Nadav and Avihu died, and Aaron became an Einain, right then and there, Moshe told him, "Don't worry about your aninas. Today, you're going to eat this kabbalas." So that's what it means, kasher tzivisi b'shas ma'aseh. As soon as Aaron became an Einain, Moshe Rabbeinu right away said, "Remember, Hashem said, today, you don't worry about your aninas. Today, you eat the carbon." And then he said, Amar kasher tziva Hashem. Moshe is reiterating, "Loi me'elai ani omer." I didn't make up this halacha to be matar and oinen. This tzivui that I'm giving you comes directly from the Rebbeinu Shalom. So that means it's quite clear that there would have been no problem to eat the carbon, even though Aaron was an oinen. We have 3 psukim to say that you eat it even though you're an oinen. The problem is we have a brisa that says pung fageret, or mini mipnei aninos nisrafa. We have a brisa that says that the psul was aninos. They couldn't eat the carbon. They burned it because of aninos. Now I don't know if this means because they ate it when they weren't allowed to eat it because they were an onion, or did they avoid it because they were an onion. I don't know exactly what the psul is yet, but it was aninos. How could you say that aninos is completely waived on this day? Lakach nemar ka'ela, and Rashi teaches us. The Gemara says later, when the Gemara gets into it, is ka'ela. What Aaron said was, Vayidaber Aaron al Moishe, Hena Yemi Kribas Chatosim, and said, Losam Ufnei Hashem, but they couldn't Isaac ka'ela. You saw what happened to me. I just suffered a huge tragedy. I'm an oinen. That's why I didn't need it. So that's how they learn. That's what Adam was saying. This horrible tragedy occurred to me. I'm an oinen. That's why, of course, I can't eat it. So the problem is, it's mashma that aninus was the problem. So the Gemara, Amar Shmuel Loikash. It's not a stira. Ha, Rabbi Yehuda Harb Nechemia. It's actually a machlokes tanoim. What is the reason why Aaron burnt the chatos of Rosh Chodesh rather than eat it? The Tanya we learned. B'pnei aninus sarfua. This is the shita of Rabbi Nechemia. L'kach nemer ke'ela divrei Rabbi Nechemia. What Aaron was telling Moishe, you know why I didn't eat it? Because after this happened to me, Hayida vein Hashem, if I would have eaten the Sira Shaidish, it can't be aninus. You know why it got burnt? Because the carbon became tamei, and the carbon that's tamei has to be burnt. And I'll prove to you for 3 reasons that the psul here could not have been aninus. Why did Aaron just burn this Sira Shaidish? There were other karbonis that he ate that he shouldn't have eaten either, if in fact aninus was a problem.
Yeah, but Aaron's answer was, I should eat it when this happened to me. So he's connecting it to.
It wasn't because of the tragedy. It was because halachically he's anointed.
Yeah. But he's connecting it to the death of his 2 sons.
Correct. In other words, how could I eat it? I'm anointed.
So it has nothing to. Why should it have anything to do with that? The carbon is puzzle.
No, I didn't eat it.
It's tamei. So it was tamei. You said.
Oh,
right?
tamei. We're going to have to understand where tumah comes in. That's right. If you hold the tumah nishrafu, it's going to need a lot of explanation. And the Gemara
because it seems to contradict the pasuk.
Yes, and the Gemara is going to have to deal with how Rabbi Yehuda understands the pasuk. Davar acher, I'll give you another reason why it's impossible to say that the problem here is aninus. Because we're going to see on the base that no matter what, even if you hold that there was a problem, they weren't allowed to eat it, al aninus, for sure the night after, even though by the Yom HaMisa nowadays, which is the Raisa, everybody holds that the Leil follows the Yom, whether it's the Raisa or the Rabbanon, but for sure doing the Meluyim, for sure everybody agrees that there was no prohibition for the Einain to eat it. So they could have eaten it at night. That's not a reason to burn the carbon. You could have eaten it at night. Davar acher, what do you mean there's no one to eat it? You and your sons were Einanim. You're not the only game in town. Valai Pinchas haYeiman. Pinchas was there. Pinchas was a kohen. Why couldn't Pinchas eat it? So it cannot be that the problem was aninus. That's why it must have been tumah. Rava wants to say that it's not a machlokes. We wanted to say that the 2 braysos that we started with is a machlokes. The brayso that says that there was no problem of aninus is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. But Zok Rava, no, Idi Rabbi Nechemia. They're both going according to Rabbi Nechemia. We have it reiterated so many times. There's no problem of aninus. So how could the problem have been aninus? Well, like kasha. Kan bekache shah, kan bekache dairas. When did the Torah matir aninus on that day? Only for karbonis that were specific to that day. So it applied to all the karbonis except for the sirachatas. The sirachatas was not a special carbon for the day of the Hakamas HaMishkan. It was a routine carbon that was brought every month. For that, the exemption of aninus was not given. So that's why that will answer a lot of questions, because that will answer why they didn't burn the other 3 karbonis as the Rabbi Yehuda asked Rabbi Shimon. It also for emperors. Not the Sirish Chodesh. Sirish Chodesh can eat when you're anointed. It still doesn't answer the third kasha. What about Pinchas? He was not an onion. Why didn't he eat it? So the Gemara is going to get to that later. Zok Gemara. So now that we have these two approaches to what happened, Rab Nechemia heichi mitar tzanikroi, Rabbanan heichi mitar tzalahu lanikroi. How does Rab Nechemia learn through this parsha, and how do the Rabbanan learn through this parsha? Zok Gemara. Rab Nechemia matchlochi. This is how Rab Nechemia deciphers these two. Moishe Rabbeinu admonished Aaron. Madulo echalten es achatas ben kohen kodesh. Amaloi Moishe la Aaron. Moishe was speculating with Aaron. There's multiple reasons why you might not have eaten the korban. Is it shema nichnes dama lafnai v'lafnim? And we had this conversation already. Amaloi no. Hein lahuvas dama. Shema chutz l'mechitzas yotzes. Maybe the damas yotzei. Amaloi no b'kodesh yotzei. So then Moshe asked, maybe v'dilma ba'aninis akruvesua upasotua. And the onion is not allowed to do avodah. Maybe you were makar with the korban also onion, and that's where the korban is possible. Amar lei. So Aaron told Moishe, v'chiheim hikrivu ani yakrafti. You think my children who are kohanim hadyotim, they were makar with the korban, and an onion is possible avodah? I did it. I'm the kohen gadol. I had to do all avodas today, and I'm allowed to do avodah even when I'm an onion. Amar lei. And he told him, "Hein lohuva es doma uvakoyish oisa achal toichlu oisa kasher tzivisi." So what happened was Moishe Rabbeinu says, "Lohuva es doma uvakoyish oisa." There were no other psul. You should have eaten it kasher tzivisi, like I told you. As soon as you became an oinen, ba'anina sheichlu. So that was Moishe Rabbeinu's time to Aaron. Amar lei. So what did Aaron respond? But the krena oisa ka'ela. You know what happened to me? You saw the tragedy that happened to me. I lost 2 children. V'achalti chatas hayoim. I should eat a chsir chatos when I'm an oinain. Hayidei be'enei Hashem. Would Hashem have been happy with it? You're telling me that there's no problem of aninus. You just said kasher tzivisi. Aninus is allowed. Moshe Rabbeinu, maybe you are making a mistake. Shema lo shemata el b'kotshei shah. Maybe when the Rebbeinu Shalom told you that an oinin today is allowed to eat from the karbanis, maybe he is only referring to the karbanis that were special for today. The ibikachi dairis, it's not likely that Hashem said it like the sirachatos as well, because I don't even need Hashem to tell me that. I have a kavachomer that I shouldn't be able to eat it. Kavachomer meiser hakal, uma meiser hakal, madach meiser, which is not nearly as kodesh and as severe as kachim. Amr Torah lo achalti ba'ayni mimenu. An onion may not eat meiser. The kachei does like kosher again. Surely an onion cannot eat a korban. So I think Moshe Rabbeinu, you might be mistaken when Hashem told you that an onion eats. I don't know if he was referring to the sir achatus, the sir chodesh. Miyad, instantly Moshe agreed that he made a mistake. Vayishma Moshe vayita ve'enov hoide v'lei bosh Moshe loimer loy shemati. Moshe was not embarrassed to say, no, that's not what I heard, and deny, so it shouldn't look like he forgot. Aaron, you're right, I forgot the halach. But you were right, in fact, you were not allowed to eat the sirish chodesh. That's how Rabbi Nechemia approaches the sugya, and the reason why Aaron didn't eat it, because there was a problem of aninus. But Rabbi Shimon how will they learn it? Because they learned there's a problem of tumah. Very similar, it only departs from the dialogue a little bit later. So let's start. Madula echaltas echaltas from kohen kodesh. Shamanit was double of nine lafnim. Amar hein lehuva es dama. Shema chus mechitzaz yotzes. Amar lehem bakodesh oisa. V'dilma aninus akru v'sua v'stalsua. Amar leh Moshe hein yikrivu the paslamu aninus ani kraftia. So now is where there's a departure from Reb Nechemia's pshat. Moshe Rabbeinu asked, "V'dilma agav miraychu." You just suffered a terrible tragedy. It's possible that you're not laser focused on your job. It's normal for someone to get distracted after suffering such a horrible tragedy. Maybe agav miraraychu pashatuba, you were not meticulously careful, and it became tamei due to your lack of oversight. Amar loy. So Aaron told Moshe, "Is that what you think of me?" Moshe kachandi be'inecha shani mevaze kachei shemayim, but the krenu oisa kaela. You think that I would be mevaza kosher shemayim and not give it the proper focus and the proper attention and the proper shmira? But the even if such a tragedy happened to me again and again and again, I would never, ever, ever relax on my job. That could not have ever happened. Amar Loi, so Moshe Rabbeinu said, so that there's no problem. The Ihein lehuva is lehuva kodesh lekodesh oisa alchal toichlu oisa b'kodesh kasher tzivisi v'anina sheichlu. So then why didn't you eat it? And no one's allowed to eat it. Amar Loi, so Aaron corrected Moshe as follows. And he said, Shema Loi shemata ela b'layla. Maybe the heter that you heard that an onion can eat karbanis today, maybe that was only tonight. Not the Yom HaMisa, but the Lail Acha Yom HaMisa. The Ibi Yom, because if you want to make an argument that even on the day of the Misa, where there's normally a Raisidik Israel for Kohen to eat from Kachim, Kal V'Chomer Ma'Shakal, Ma'Shakal Amar Torah La'Chalti V'Ani Menu, Kodesh Chomer L'Kol Shegein, Miyad Moishe was Moida, Vayishma Moishe, Vayita V'Einov, Loi Boish, Moishe Loimer Loi Shemati, Alo Shemati V'Shachach. So, Freik the Gemara, if there was no psul, if there's taka no psul, so then why taka did Aaron burn the carbon? Why taka didn't Aaron the Kohen? Why did he burn the carbon? He should have waited and eaten it at night, because he's learning that even for the Sirish Chodesh at night on the day of the Miluyim, the Torah relaxed the requirement or the prohibition on Einan to eat. Zok to Gemara, you know what happened? Tuma ba'Einis basa. Zok Rashi. If you're eating the carbon now, you're focused on it. But if you're told that you can't eat this till tonight, so you put it aside and you get busy with other things, and during that time where maybe the oversight level could have dropped a drop, as sheretz could have touched it. So ultimately, it was Tumah that caused it. Now, it's a little bit questionable. You might ask, where do you see that in the Lashon HaPasuk? So the Acharonim handle with that, where you would see that in the Lashon HaPasuk. If you learn like the Rabbanim, who say that the whole problem is to eat for the onion to eat the kachim by day, not by night, so it makes sense what the Lashon HaYom is, meaning when Aaron responded to Moishe, he said, Heina HaYom, hikruvas chatosim v'selosim. They were makabit today, they can't eat it today, they have to wait till tonight. So it makes sense why he says HaYom. Elul Rab Nechemia, my HaYom, what do you mean today? You're never allowed to eat the Sirish Chodesh as an oinen. So what do you mean hayoim? Zok Gemara, hayoim means hayoim means chayvas hayoim. But Aaron was telling Moishe, this isn't a special carbon of the Yimei HaMiluyim. This is a chayvas hayoim carbon. It's a chiyuv every Rish Chodesh. So this does not have the exemption that an oinen is allowed to eat from it. Zok Gemara, Bishtam Reb Nechemia, hayin hayoim. What did Aaron say? Hey ayayim, this is the carbon of ayayim. So of course I cannot eat it. El Rabbanan, my hey ayayim. Aaron should have told Moishe, hayayim ikrivu. It's today. Today I can't eat it. I can eat it by night. Hey ayayim doesn't make sense. Zaktor hachigomar. Hey nikrivu. What he meant to say, hey nikrivu. You think my children were makar of this carbon, and then Aninus would have puzzled it? No. Ani crafty. I myself did the avodah, and the Kohen Gadol, and the Oinen who does the avodah, it's 100% kosher. So now let's analyze what the three tainas were that Rabbi Yehuda had to prove that the problem could not possibly have been animus. Amar Mar, Hayu l'shloshton sheyisrifu. They should have burnt them all. My shloshton, what three karbanos? There were three karbanos. What three karbanos were there? The Tanya, it says in the pasuk, V'sirachat doris Moishe. There's three seirim that were brought on that day. Seir, the first word, seir, is referring to Zir, Seir, and Achshain. This was part of Nachshain's carbon. B'yom Rishon, Hikriv Eskarbani, Nachshav ben Aminada. It was that Seir. Chatas, Zu Chatas Shmini. That was also a special Chatas of Lusha, only for the Shiva Shemei Meluyim. Darash, that's already the Sirish Chodesh. Seir Sharish Chodesh. Yochel Shloshton Nisrafu, you might think that Aaron HaKohen burnt them all, didn't eat any of them. Talmud Loimer v'hinei soyraf, Lashon Yochid, Echad Nisraf, v'loi Shloshton Nisrafu. Darash, that's a double Lashon. There's only one admonishment. Why didn't you eat it? So what was the second admonishment about? Darash, Shtei Drisha Ishlama, Amalahu, Moishe said, I have two problems. A, is Mipnei Ma'achat Azud Nisrafa, and if you hold it should be burnt, then ve'elu munachos. Why is it that you didn't burn the other two? So that was the darish. Ve'en yudeh ezehu. I don't know which is the one that was burnt. Moshe said the carbon that you burnt wrongfully is made to carry the Avodah Eda. Now we know it's a Shirish Chodesh. Have a Shirish Chodesh because that's mechaper on Tumas Mikdash v'Kadoshov on behalf of Klal Yisrael.
Isn't the Dorish? Doesn't that mean that you didn't learn? You just learned it out in an indirect way from what the Rebbeinu Shem said. So you're saying he wasn't. Rebbeinu Shem wasn't.
Isn't the pasuk the touch of Dorish in that pasuk is that he cornered them like what was it he inquired to them. It was an inquiry about this. What did you
Okay. Okay.
He called them out on it. So Shaper Ka'amrle, they had a good tanya. They have a good tanya to Rabbi Nechemia that all three should have been burnt. So tomorrow, no. Rabbi Nechemia Tamei, the Amar Kache Shah, Loi Pasal B'Haninas. Right? We had a machlokes. It was Rabbi Yehuda Shimon said that Aninas doesn't pass for anybody, but it's only allowed at night. Rabbi Nechemia didn't learn that. Rabbi Nechemia learned the heter of Aninas was only for Kache Shah, not for the Sirish Chodesh. Amar Mar. The next question that they asked from Nechemia was, why didn't they eat at night? There it would have been mutter. Again, Rabbi Nechemia doesn't hold that. Shavar Karmeloi, Tomorrow Kasavi, Rabbi Nechemia holds Aninas Laila Dairaisa. Rabbi Nechemia holds, we had a machlokes yesterday, that Aninas of Yom HaMisa, the following night is Dairaisa. So he would not have been able to eat the Sirachatos that night. The third question that they asked him was, Pinchas Hayuimain. That's a good time. Pinchas was a kohen. Why didn't they just give it to him? At that point, Pinchas was not a kohen yet. Pinchas only became a kohen once he killed Zimri. At that point, after he killed Zimri, that's when he became a kohen. Rabbi Ashi Amar, no. Pinchas didn't even become a kohen at the Moishe Zimri. He didn't become a kohen until much later. At Shesam Shalom Bein Ashvatim, Shenemar Vayishma Pinchas HaKoyen Unisiyeh HaEda V'Rosh Alpha Yisrael. There was a story where the people on the Eva Yarden, Reuben, Gad, and Chatim and Asher, they built their own Mizbeach. And Klal Yisrael thought that it was Lavodah Zarah. And they wanted to have a huge civil war. And they sent Pinchas says, hold your horses, let me go speak to them. Let's use diplomacy. And Pinchas was able to help them work it out, and he showed them that it wasn't Lavodah Zarah. And the first time you ever find that the Torah refers to Pinchas as Pinchas HaKoyen was at that time. So that's when he became a Kohen. It says that he had a Bris Kunas Olam already from the time of Zimri. All it was saying is you're not a Kohen now, but when you become a Kohen, it will remain permanently into your family. Why only there did it say Pinchas HaKoyen? That Vayishma Pinchas HaKoyen, Avada, he was already a Kohen from way before, from the Moishe Zimri. But what was upgraded at that Maisa was that it was designated that all of his descendants are going to be the Kaihanim Gedolim of Klal Yisrael. Amar Rab said a very interesting halacha. Moishe Rabbeinu, Kohen Gadol. He had the status of a Kohen Gadol during the Miluyim, and therefore B'chaylik B'kot Shishmayim Hoya, Shenemar, Me'el HaMiluyim, L'Moishe Hoya L'mana. So you see clearly Moishe Rabbeinu had the status of a Kohen Gadol. Measure Vek Gemara. How could you possibly say that Moshe Rabbeinu had the status of a Kohen Gadol? V'loi Pinchas Hoya Himayim. What were one of the tanyas that Rabbi Yehuda asked Rabbi Nechemia? If there was a problem of Aninus, why didn't Pinchas eat it? Right? That was the tanya. They could have asked a better tanya. They should have said Moshe could have eaten it. So you're right. Technically, Moshe legally could have eaten it. But Moshe, the Torah B'Shchina Damar Moshe was very busy still being makabel the details of the Torah, going up to Har Sinai every day. He was too busy to be eating kosher. So therefore, that wasn't what the Gemara proposed. Meisvei, Lechem Elikov. This is talking about a Balmum, although he cannot do Avodah, but Lechem Elikov Mikoshe HaKodeshim
This is long after he went up to Har Sinai. He wasn't going. He was going to the oil Moed, the other oil Moed.
So Beshkama Allah is referring to the oil Moed?
No, when
Beshkama Hala Lahar, Bimei Matan Torah, Oh, so could be what it was saying is there he was going early, so maybe now also he was busy a whole day. Maybe Maybe that's what's right. Because he wasn't going. Itaka wasn't going up to Harshina by the Meluyim. That was almost a year later.
That's right.
So he went up to Harshina even during the Meluyim. Okay.
No, he put his tent outside of the Machnes, and he used to go there all the time.
But whatever it is, he was definitely too busy to be eating.
Right. Okay.
Back to the Gemara. The Amar Mar Moishe was coming along. Moishe lechem alakav mikocha kochim and kochim yoichel. Im nemer kocha kochim. If the Torah says that a Baal Mum can eat kocha kochim, lama nemer kochim kalam. Why is it necessary to speak that out by kochim kalam? Vim nemer kochim kalam, lama nemer kocha kochim. Zoktimar, we need both because with one I wouldn't have known the other. Idolo nemer kochim kalam hayusaimer dafka kocha kochim hudoichel. You know why? Sharei hutru lazar v'lahen. There's an instance where you'll find that kocha kochim can be eaten by a zar, but you'll never find anywhere that kochim could be eaten by a zar. I'm sorry, that kochim kalim eaten by a zar. You do find sometimes that kochim could be eaten by a zar, but you'll never find that kochim kalim could be eaten by a zar. We'll get back to that. Kochim kalim yoichal. So I would think that he can eat kochim kalim because there you never find a zar can eat it, and therefore the Torah has to say that the balmum kohen can eat kochim kalim. Vilo never kochim. I would have said the kachim kalam yeyochel shem kalam. That's obvious. It's not as holy. There a kohen balmum can eat it. But the kachim lo yeyochel the kachnemer kachim ulakachnemer kachim kalam. That's the brayse. Katani mia. Let's go back. The brayse said sherei hutru lazar v'lahen. Kachim is unique that it's mutter. You find in a certain instance it's a mutter to a zar. Where in history did you ever find that kachim can be eaten by a zar? Lav Moishe must be referring to Moishe eating kachim in Maluyim. And he's called a zar. So how could you, Rav, say that Moshe Rabbeinu had the status of a Kohen Gadol? The Bryce is using Moshe's eating as an example of a zar eating. Rav Sheshes, that's not what it's talking about. Loi bebamal zar. It's not referring to Moshe. You know where you find that kachim could be eaten by a zar? You find it by the bamas. Now, what carbon of kachim could possibly have been eaten by a zar in the bama? It can't be a chatas or a asham because those karbanos were not allowed to be brought in the bama, and it can't be a shlomim because a shlomim is kachim kalam, and it can't be an oila because an oila nobody eats at all. So what are we talking about? It must go according to the shita that they would bring carbon menachos. A carbon mincha is kodesh kachim. They brought it on the bama, and a zar was able to eat it. So that's an example of where kachim was eaten by a zar. You're going to ask, what about kachim kalim? Kachim kalim is also eaten by a zar. Yes, shlomim, but shlomim is eaten by the bailam. But what about the chaz of a shaykh? The chaz of a shaykh of a shlomim, which is normally given to the kohen, was given to the zar. So that's also an example of kachim kalim that went to a zar. So what's the Gemara saying? That kachim? So Rashi, by the Lama, even though they brought shlomims, the chaz of a shaykh did not go to the kohen. Chaz of a shaykh was eaten by it, but it was eaten by the Israel. There was no din chaz of a shaykh that it was given to the kohen. So that's more about her. Miriam, she was locked up for 7 days as a menugas. Miyaskira, who locked her up? Im timer Moishe skira, Moishe zaru. Moshe was a zar. He's not a kohen. He doesn't qualify to make declare a negatami. Vein zar royas in the goyim. Vin timer Aaron skira, Aaron karafu. Vein karav royas in the goyim. So you might ask, Moshe was also karav. But the Bryce is still declaring Moshe Rabbeinu as a zar. So who did it? Hashem b'chvoidu v'atzmai l'Miriam. Oisa shah. Ani kayin, v'ani maskira, ani chalta, ani parta. Petra. I will make her into a Mitzayah. I'll make her Ois Mitzayah. I'll take care of it myself. Kavod God. But Katani Mios, Moshe Zor, Vein Zor right in the goyim. So how could you, Rav, say that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Kohen Gadol? He was a Zor. Shiny Mars the goyim, the Aaron Ubanov Ksuvim Beparsha. Not even though Moshe might have been a Kohen, but the only type of Kohen that could see the goyim is a Kohen whose children are going to be Kohenim as well. Who the Kahuna will stay in their lineage. That didn't happen by Moshe. So Moshe, although he's a Kohen Gadol, but Lagabi Hilchos Goyim, he has the status of a Zor. Beautiful. Meisvei.
Who else was going to do it? This only Kahana was Aaron. He's related to Miriam.
Right. That's the Gemara's kasha. Who could have done it? It must have been Hashem.
Must have been who? Sorry?
It must have been Hashem.
Oh.
Meisvei. Chamesh.
But wait a second. But Moishe had to teach them all. So initially, it's impossible for anything negated to his family that he should be a Zor.
The Mishnah says he was a Zor. L'gabi the din of the Goyim, he had the status of a Zor.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
his proclamation of a nega would not have been valid. So Chamesh Shemachis Hoisa Elisheva Yisera B'nai Yisrael. Elisheva had 5 wonderful features that others didn't have. It would be perfect to place on a shidduch resume, except one of her features was her shidduch resume. But it was 5 great features. First of all, Yiblo Melech, her brother-in-law, because she was the wife of Aharon. Her brother-in-law, meaning Aharon's brother Moishe, was the king. That's not a bad resume. I am the sister-in-law of the king. Isha, her husband, was a Kohen Gadol. So again, this can't be her shidduch resume because she's married already. I'm not sure what it was for. Maybe it was for her second marriage. I'm not sure exactly. But she had 5 good points on her resume. Second, Benoah Skan, her son, Elazar Kohen, was the Skan. Ben Benoah, her grandson, who was Pinchas, was Meshuach Milchama. And Vachel, her brother, Nachshon ben Aminadav, was Nasi Shevet. So she had 5 good things going for her, but she had 1 tragic thing going for her. Vavela al Shnei Baneha. But she lost Rachman and Tzla, Nadav and Aviv. Katanimios, Yivama Melech. Moshe Rabbeinu was a king. Melechin, Kohen Gadol. If it was checking off her advantages, she should have said her brother-in-law was a Melech and a Kohen Gadol. It doesn't say that. Zok Gemara, Ema Af Melech. No, it just means he was a king as well. Kitanoi, let's say this is a machloikis tanoim as to whether or not Moshe Rabbeinu was a kohen. It says Vayichar Af Hashem b'Moshe. HaKadosh Baruch Hu got upset at Moshe, and this is where it says Vayichar Hashem Moshe. I believe is when he didn't want to go to Parai. He was an Onav. He didn't want to go. So what does it say? It says, no, that's before. It's before.
Olive.
It's all out before. It says that Moshe was rejecting the Malchus. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha Eimer Kol Charei Naf Shabbatayr. Anytime the Torah expresses a Charei Naf, there's always a consequence. Nemer by Roshim. There's always going to be some type of consequence. V'zeh loy nemer by Roshim. By this Charei Naf that Hashem had towards Moshe Rabbeinu, it does not show any impact. It does not show any consequence of this Charei Naf. Zog to Gemara. No, there was a Roshim as well. Shenema, right after what did Hashem tell Moshe? What do you mean Halevi? Well, like Kainu, wasn't Aaron a Kohen? Zog to Gemara, this is what Hashem was telling Moshe. Hachi Gomer, Ani Amarti Ata Kohen, Vu Levi. My original intention was that you would be the Kohen and he would be the Levi. Achshav Hu Kohen v'Ata Levi. The Chachamim, no. He wasn't punished losing the kahuna. His old kahuna was only for 7 days. It had nothing to do with that conversation. So that cannot be the punishment. Or there's another picture that says, Moshe Rabbeinu had the kahuna forever. It just means that his children didn't continue to be kohanim. Banav Yikru al Shevat Halevi. So his children were not kohanim like him. The Omer, and another proof is it says Moshe v'Aaron b'chayhana u'shmul b'kari shemai. So you see, Moshe was a kohen. It's just that his children didn't receive the guna. Frankly, my Omer, why do I need the pasuk of Omer to prove that Moshe Rabbeinu's children didn't become a kohen? You know why in the pasuk, in the first pasuk, it says Moshe Ishalakim Bon of Yikra Shevet Halevi? That's because Moshe wasn't around then. So why would it mention anything about Moshe? So it's not a right to Moshe. Tomorrow, therefore, it says Moshe v'Aaron b'chayhana. That's why it says Moshe Aaron b'chayhana. It says first that Moshe was a kohen. Now you can't be medayik that Bon of Yikra Shevet Levi mashma he was a kohen. No, he was also a Levi. All the time, the pasuk didn't refer to Moshe because we're talking generations later when Moshe wasn't around. Frankly, never by Roshim. I'm going to show you other examples that there wasn't. Moshe, after he warned Pari about Machas B'charis, he left B'chariof. Do you find the punishment there? Amar Shtakas, what are you talking about? Sotroi, Moshe slapped Pari across the face. V'yotza, and then he left. Frank Gemara, could your Shlokish said that Moishe would have been disrespectful to Paro and he would have slapped him across the face? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he said it means stand by the or in front of a Paro, but stand with respect. Because he's far to Melech. So how could it be that Rish Lakish would hold that Moshe would slap Paro? Rabbi Yochanan Rashahu, the hay is Panechabay. Fakert. Rabbi Yochanan shot with the tapel across is Steinman Punamaran in his most embarrassing moment. Fakert bimavase. So let's say it's Rish Lakish who said Steinman Punamaran and be chutzpahdik, because he also held that Moshe slapped Paro across the face, and it's Rabbi Yochanan who said that stand in front of Paro with respect. Amar V'yanai, lo'alim te'emes malchus alecha. A person should always fear the malchus. The Chesed says in the pasuk, "V'yardu kol avodecha ela elai." All of your avodah will come to you. With the pasuk is as quoted in Shemais. It says, "V'yardu kol avodecha ela elai v'ishtachavu l'leimar say ata." So basically, Moshe told Paro, everybody of your nation is going to come begging us to leave. Say ata v'chala Hashem asher b'reglecha. Right? So he warned them, never mind, you're going to throw me out. Wait a
second, you're talking about Moshe said he's going to throw them, every nation wants
Moshe told Paro, you're not letting me out, you're going to be begging us to leave soon.
Every country's been wanting to throw out Jews.
What's new? so Zok the Gemara, Moshe should have told Paro, everyone knows Paro in pajamas in the middle of the night. Paro came running, but Moshe didn't mention that. He just talked about the nation. So you see, you have to have Emes Malchus. Even then, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't speak disrespectfully towards the Malchus. It says, "V'yad Hashem hoisa el Eliyahu v'yishanem mosnov v'yoretz l'fnei Achav." This is when Eliyahu was in front of Achav the king. Even he walked respectfully in front of Achav. Amar Ula bikesh Moshe Malchus. Moshe wanted Malchus, v'loy nosnu loy, and it was not given to him. The Chesiv, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe when he approached the Sneh? I'll take of haloim. Don't ask me for haloim. The ein haloim ela malchus. Haloim refers to malchus. Hashem said,
"I'll take." He said before he didn't want malchus.
I don't know. Shenemar mi anoichi Hashem Elokim ki avisani ad haloim. This was, I believe, when David or when Shlomo became a king. He said, "Who am I?" Who am I to have the schus of Elohim to have malchus?
At this point, he didn't even want the job, Moishe Rabbeinu. How can you talk about malchus? Yeah.
Maybe it's a chalos beitin.
So what?
It's a chalos beitin. Ask each if he wants a David. He also says no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Zok the Gemara. Did I just say that? I hope he doesn't have YouTube. Tomorrow, Masav Rava, Moishe Rabbeinu, if this comes back to me, I'm going to know what came from you. Are you telling me? I'm sorry. Masav Rava, Rabbi Shmuel Oimer, Yevma Melech, her brother-in-law was the king. Amar Rava, so you see that Moshe Rabbeinu was a king. What do you mean he didn't get it? He was the king. Amar Rava, Loy Lazari Kamar. Haloi means not something you'll be a king, that you'll be a king and it will remain in your family. Are you telling me that anytime it says Aloim, it means that it's going to be a malchus that's going to stand this test of time? Issue. So you see that the word Aloim was used towards Shol, and Shol malchus didn't last. Zok Gemara, who in Zared Loy? Zok Gemara, no. Iboy Sema, who ha hava. No, so Iboy Sema ha hava ish boishes. There are those who say, so what do you mean? Ish boishes, who was the son of Shol, also had malchus a little bit. Iboy Sema, shiny Shol, ta'afilu begabei loikoim. Avada, he was originally going to be given malchus forever to his children as well. But by his aveirs, he lost the whole malchus, he lost the whole promise. But originally it was going to be a haloim type of malchus. Could you have a Lazar? Amar Chanina. And he said, whenever they give gedula to a person, it's an everlasting gedula. Poiskin loy ulazari at soykol adoyrosh shenemar loyigra mitzadik enov ves malachim lekise. I believe it's important that we see the end of the pasuk vayeshivim lanetzach, right? And then it says vayigbohu. Vayigbohu means it might get to his head. If he gets the Aito of the Gemara, but if it goes to his head, it becomes a Lagaiva, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mashpilo, Hakadosh Baruch Hu takes away his nun. Shenemar, the Masurin, Bezikin, Yilkodin, the Chavle Avani. If they're going to be tied up with Averis, then because of their Averis, they're going to be totally destroyed. Zok the Gemara, Bali Mumin, Bain Bali Mumin Oivrin, Bain not Bali Mumin Oivrin, they cannot do the Avoida, but they could eat. They could eat from the Karbonis. Zok the Gemara, Midan Amili. How do you know that they're Chaylik? The Tanner Rabbanan. It says Kol Zocha. Every Zocher with the Kol is Marble or Rabbis Bali Mumin. Look the Gemara Lamai. Lagabi, what Allah is the Torah including Kol Zocher? Ilachila, if it's to allow them to eat, Haray Kvar Nemar, Lechem Elekov, Mikache Kachim, Yoicha. So we know they could eat. Ella, when it says Kol Zocher, it must be referring to Lechaluka, that not only could they eat, but they're also entitled to line up and get a chelik from every carbon. Tanya, we have another brayso. Kol Zocher Rabbis Bali Mumin. Lama, Ila Lachila Haray Kvar Amar. Ila Chaluka Haray Kvar Amar, because there's a second Kol Zocher. So therefore, why do we need the second Kol Zocher? Shiyochel Einle Latam V'Nasa Balum. I would have only thought who gets to be chaylik. That's if when he was born he was a tam, and the Rahman al-Thani, something happened to him and he became a balmum. He has more shaykhs. He'll be chaylik. But balmum ekari. But if someone was born a balmum, minayin, maybe he wouldn't get a piece of the action. Tamalomer kol zacher. Tanya idach. We have a third kol zacher. Kol zacher l'rabis balmum. It includes balmum. L'mai. Ilach ila rekvayomer. Ilach haluk rekvayomer. Vila balmum ekari rekvayomer. So why do I need the third kol zacher? Sheyachol. Ainli ala balmum kavua. I would have thought only a balmum kavua, only a permanent mum has the right to take from the kachim. But balmum over, if he only has a temporary mum, minayin, maybe then he couldn't take. What's worse? A mum over, a temporary mum, or a permanent mum? Avada permanent mum is worse. So how could you tell me I would have only thought that someone with a permanent mum gets a chelik, but someone with a temporary mum doesn't? The logic is exactly the opposite. So more not necessarily. I'm Rabsheshes epoch. So Rabsheshes says, yeah, you're right. Flip it around. But Ravashi Amar, Lol Mosepech V'Yisra. So Kedai Dechamina, I would have thought that a Baal Mum Oiver should less be entitled to a chelik, for the reason simple is he tame, just like someone who's tame. Ma tame, kamad loitar loyachel. It's also a temporary mum, so to speak, and during that period of time, he's not entitled. Avhai nami, kamad loimisakan loyachel. If someone has a temporary situation, then he doesn't get it until he rectifies it. Permanent situation, Hashem says the Baal Mum can have. Kamash Malan, that even a Baal Mum Oiver gets to be chayil. Kol she'eni royu. If you're not royu to do the avodah, you don't get a chayil. For more v'loy, Baal Mum the royu avodah v'chayil. The Baal Mum proves this wrong. He's not royu avodah, and he's chayil. V'su. On the other hand, haroyu avodah chayil can I be medayik? Mishnah doesn't say this. The Mishnah says whoever's royal, whoever's not royal doesn't chayil, but we're being medayik. But if someone's royal avodah is chayil, that's not true either. Harei tamei bekarbanos tzibur, the royal avodah, a tamei by karbanos tzibur who is royal avodah, because tamei huter tzibur, nevertheless ve'ein chayil. Zok Gemara royal lachila ka'am. We mean royal lachila. Anyone who's royal to eat, he's chayil. That's not true. Harei kadon the royal lachila ve'ein chayil. A kadon is allowed to eat kachim. And we have rice from Sukkim, but he doesn't get it. He doesn't get a chelik. Zok Gemara haloi katana. Your diak is not. What are you saying? You want to make a diak. The diak is anyone who's royal achila, anyone who's royal achila, anyone who's not royal achila doesn't eat. From that, you have a medayik that if he is royal achila, he does get a chelik. But it doesn't say that. That's your own diak. Who said that we have to comply with your diak? Haloi katani. Zok Gemara now that you're telling me that you can't ask me a kasha from a diak, so then I can go to my original pshat that if someone's royal avoida, lo'ilum k'dekamar meikara, imishum tamei, tamei loikatani. It doesn't say tamei. V'imishum balmum, and if it's also balmum, rachmane rabbi, so you can't ask me a kasha from tamei, that a tamei is royal avoida, and then chayla, because that's a dik you want to make. Don't ask me a kasha from a dik. And the balmum, that's because there's a special posuk. Zok Marfilu tamei b'shas rikas damim v'tahar. Even if he was tamei during the first set of avodas, but of course, being makter, the emurim are also part of the avodah, that's not good enough. So it's mashma that the critical time where the kohen must be tahar is during the zrika. The hectare chalavim is not important. This would be not consistent with the sheet of Abishol. The Tanya Abishol said you need both. The coin that gets a chelik of the carbon has to be tahar from the beginning of the zrika up until the end of the hectare chalav. The Amakra hamakriv is dam hashlamim ve'es dam hachelak. So our Mishnah holds you just need him to be tahar b'shas zrika. Abishol holds he has to be tahar even b'shas hectare chalavim, which is actually a very interesting point. Because if you think about it, right after the zrika, we always understood that they distributed the meat. That's when the meat becomes mutter to be eaten. But a kohen who was who was tar, you wouldn't give it to him because how do you know he's not going to become tummy during that chalavim? So kumdachas, they weren't able to give him his meat until after the ramak to the chalavim, which would sometimes be in the middle of the night, and then he had to finish eating it by dawn. Right? It really limited their time. It's not. I mean, it's not so much fun anymore to have a barbecue at 3 a.m. unless you're a yeshiva guy.
Let me ask you something. And can you have two different kahana? One does the zrika, one does the.
Yeah, you could. But we're talking about a kohen who's entitled to the chelik had to have been tahar from the zrika until the end of the Torah. So Bar Ashi, is it only critical that during the zrika and during the Torah he should be tahar? What if he became tummy in between, but he was matar himself? So he was tahar by both cases, side by the zrika, side by the hectare, but in the middle he wasn't. So boy Rav Ashi mitva beitayimau b'shas rika b'shas hektar b'ina d'ika. You have that. Idilma achi tar mishas rika of achas hektar chlavim. Take it. Amar Rava. Hi Dina Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Gomirna. This halacha we learned from Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, and where did he come up with this halacha? The Amar beveis hakisei danta. He made a limud in the beis hakisei like a tracht and learning. The Gemara.
How could you do that?
The Gemara is going to ask that too. So Zok Gemara, but tful yoim. What if a tful yoim comes along? V'yomar tein li mi mincha. I want the carbon mincha. I'm tummy now, but I want a piece of the mincha. V'oichol, and I want to eat it. He wants to be choylek. Amaloi, you know what the other kind of can tell him? Get lost with a kal v'choymer. Uman b'mokim shiyova koichacha b'chatotzcha. When you bring your own chatos, even if you're not part of the mishmor, you get to bring your own chatos. You're in control of your own chatos. You could eat everything. It's all yours. Nevertheless, the chesicha mechatas Yisrael, you still are not entitled to any chalukah of the meat of a chatas of Yisrael. Makam shehur karchacha b'minchasa. Your mincha, where even if your own mincha you don't get anything at all because the whole mincha gets put on the mizbeach. Surely ein aydin shadichacha b'minchas Yisrael. Clearly, you have less rights to a mincha than to a chatas. And we established that you don't get a chatas Yisrael, so you surely wouldn't get a minchas Yisrael. So there, the same, that's like the ganas kal v'chomer, because the same way I'm weaker for the mincha, your rights to the mincha are just as weak. Umayim the chisanim mechatas Yisrael shekashem sheyafa koichi kach yafa koichacha. You know why you get to withhold the chatas Yisrael from me? Because you have the same strength in your chatas as I do. Tadichenu mi mincha shekashem shura koichi kachura. Don't tell me since I'm her koicha by my mincha I can't get. You have the same her koicha as I do. We're both in the same boat. So for that you need a pasuk. The Torah says who eats the mincha? The one who was makrivit. So you can't get those friend. You want a piece? Can't be makrivit. Oh, you can't. You tefillah get lost. Now let's start from the other side. He's coming to demand a chelik of the chatas. Madach, where I have a weak grasp in my mincha zok koyin. The chisicha min minchas Yisrael, I can still push you away from getting minchas Yisrael. Mokum shiyava koichi b'chatosi. By my chatas, where I have a strong grasp, eino din shadichacha mechatas Yisrael. Surely I should have to push you away from mechatas Yisrael. So it's a ten kavachomer, but from a different angle. Amalei. So the coin could, the demanding coin can respond back. Umam shed the chisani min minchas Yisrael because shechem shur koichacha kachur koichi. So for the same reason, you can say that mechatas Yisrael shekashem sheyava koichacha kav yacha koichi kach yava koichi. So basically, we're both in the same boat. Harei oimer, we have a pasuk that says by the chatas as well. Hakoyin amachatei oisa, the koyin whose royal is rika yoichlena bochatei ve'echol. The Torah says do the avodah. Come to the Liyam, do the avodah. Oh, you can't? Get lost. Amalei. What about the chaz of a shaykh of a shlamim? Amalei tenli chaz of a shaykh, mechaz of a shaykh v'oichel. Amalei. ומה במקום שיופק ככה בחטוסך? תכי שיחה מחטוס ישראל, מקום שהוא ככה בשלומם, שאין לך בין על חזו ושייק, you only get the chazav v'shoik, not all the meat. Ein yedin shadi chachacha, so he could say, so the kohen could turn it around. Ma'am v'chisani mechadash, you can hear koich yetzel, nishoyai v'avodai. You know, you can push me away from the chatos, because I can eat the chatos, but my wife and children, my wife and my avodim cannot. So to the chazav v'shoik, she can yofa koich yetzel nishoyai v'avodai. I have a certain stronger grasp on the chazav v'shoik, is that I can share with my family. There's a pasuk that says specifically by the Shlomim as well, who gets the chazav v'shoik? Only a kohen who does the zrika. Bazroik v'echel yatzat tfil yoim kula v'chamurav al roishay. The tfil yoim turns around with his tail between his legs, with his chumras and his kulas alas kal v'chumras. He packs it up and leaves with his tail between his legs. And you know who goes with him? That also had the wind sucked out of their sail and their complaint and their tidings were diffused. None of them get a ched. Parach Ravachoy. Why didn't the kohen have another taina? How come he doesn't demand eating from the bechor? The halach is the bechor goes to the kohen. So let this kohen who's a tvul yoim demand the bechor. Nevertheless, the chisicha mechatos Yisrael, the kula deli, I get the whole bechor. The kohen gets the whole bechor. Surely I should have to push you away. So the demanding kohen, the plaintiff kohen, could come back with an argument. We're in the same boat. To the cheni mi bechor. I have a stronger grasp on the Bechor, as you mentioned. It says by the Bechor as well, as Domam Tizak al Mizbeach, Veschelbam Taktir, and only then Uvisarim Yelo. So the Kohen could tell him, Boz Reik Vechol, you want the Bechor? Come to this Rika. Oh, you can't, you're at Fil Yom, get lost. The Idich. Now, this last shtickle was Rebbe Choy. It wasn't part of the original set that someone learned in the basic Kfar, in the basic Kisei. It wasn't from Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon's limudim in the basic Kisei. Why didn't he include this limud as well? Ve'idich parach miksiv uvesaram lakoyin hazoyrek. It doesn't say the basar goes to the kohen who makes this rika. We're talking about the bechor. Rather, it says uvesaram yia lechoksiv. It just says uvesarim yilacha. It doesn't say that the bus. It just tam zamam tizroi v'schalam takir uvesarim yilacha. But it doesn't say. It doesn't directly link the besarim yilacha to the zrika. Therefore, I feel the nacher. Just because one coin did the zrika, nothing prohibits, nothing stops the bechar from going to a different coin. So now the Gemara asks Moishe's question: how do you think they're learning in the bathroom? Say, Zok the Gemara, this is gewaltig. L'oin so shiny. You know what it means for Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon not to think of learning? So Rashi, Shahoisa Shmuasa Shkur B'Piv, et G'delik to learning. Umahar Bal Korcha, he couldn't control himself. He could not control himself from not thinking the B'Torah. With the Gemata Shemati the Kedushin, I think this requires a lot of explanation, because as the Torah is not tarnished. What do you mean a gadol ador can't control himself? So that's something that would need a little parish.
You just can't turn it off anytime you want. In other words, if you're, that's
Hashem is very demanding of us. We were asked to do some very difficult things, so you got to do them.
The Gra wrote his book on math in the washroom. They say.
I guess Elizabeth Shimon didn't like math.
He wasn't proficient in math. I'll tell you what, I should have the problem during Seder that I screw with.
Probably the printing press wasn't discovered yet. There were no newspapers, so what else was he supposed to?
Didn't have a smartphone.
No smartphones.
Yeah.
I always tell people the only time I come up with my best solutions are during Shmoyne Esrei. That's what I got the greatest ideas.
Because you can't write it down.
So someone wants to tell me, okay, you know I have this problem in my house. Could you think about it during Shemini Esrei so we'll be able to solve the problem? said, "Are you kidding? My Shemona Esrei are booked up for 6 months." Okay, have an awesome day.
Yes.
I will
By
not
the
be
way-
here tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to say shir remotely. I'm not going to be here Shabbos. So I'll say shir Motzei Shabbos again remotely. So we'll learn 6:45 Motzei Shabbos on Zoom, and tomorrow I'll only be available on Zoom because I'm going to Lakewood.
Sorry to hear that.
You go Lakewood for Christmas?
You missed it.
I'm
He's
not-
Santa Claus.
I'm actually not going to Lakewood. What we're really doing is I'm like the Rav has a driver. I'm driving my wife to Lakewood for Shabbos.
Uh-huh. So you could drive the Rav back. He's not looking for a ride back?
I'm not sure if he's going to want to be in my vehicle.
You're not sure. If you want, then you're gonna have to be screw of a piv while you're in the car.